Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I'd review this little video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this was another analyzation that I found to be very particularly interesting of the up and coming fight between that of the Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Bud Crawford fight. And of course, for those of you that have been around my channel for a while, you already kind of know, my analyzation of the fight or the skill sets of both fighters, at least the skill sets that I believe that they possess. And on top of that, who more than likely I would favor heading into the fight. Of course, I've not given my official final breakdown or final fight prediction, but I am more than likely going to go with that of Canelo Alvarez, more than likely by unanimous decision. It's possible that he could win by stoppage, but, I'll have to see. In this fight, in my view, what I will personally state is this. I am going slightly with Canelo Alvarez. I believe that Vegas has Canelo Alvarez as the slight favorite right now, which I think is about the right odds. Now, certain people overall have stated in the past, or they may ask me, you've stated that both of these fighters you believe are somewhat similarly skilled, at least in terms of their all around skill sets. You believe that they're both on a similar level in terms of how great they are. So, why would you predict that this fight could be 50-50 once again if Terence Bud Crawford is moving up a couple of weight classes and he's never been in that weight class before? Well, as I've already stated, Canelo, in my view, it's very apparent that he has had, at least in my view, a way greater drop off in terms of ability than what a Terence Bud Crawford has. And I'm not claiming overall that you could not debate that Terence Bud Crawford maybe is more skilled than that Canelo. You could debate that if you want to. But I think that you also can maybe debate it a little bit of vice versa, at least depending on what you really like in a boxing style and depending on what you really like in a fighter. Now, the narrative that I've never agreed with personally is just that Terence Bud Crawford beats Canelo Alvarez in every single category, and there's not one thing that Canelo beats Terence Bud Crawford in. I've never personally agreed with that. Now, if you want to claim something along the lines of if they were, more similar in size, at least in terms of weight, or if they were the exact same weight class, that Canelo Alvarez would lose to Crawford or something like that, you could claim that if you want to. I don't think that that's something completely out of the realms of possibility. If you wanted to claim that one fighter was a little bit more skilled over the other because of certain factors, you could claim that. But just to claim that one fighter is completely way more skilled than the other in every other category and then it's not even close, in my personal view, that just wouldn't be reality. But of course, once again, I think a lot more people take a look at things on the surface and don't really do a whole deep dive or an analysis in terms of depth. Or to be quite honest with you, really when it comes to boxing, a lot of people just truly don't know what the hell they're looking at. And I could be completely wrong. Terence Bud Crawford may completely beat up Canelo Alvarez from pillar to post, but I doubt it. That being stated, this fight, in my personal view, is a close matchup. And once again, I think that Terence Bud Crawford, that he has certain things that may be able to affect Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo Alvarez has certain things that may be able to affect that of a Terence Bud Crawford. But the main factor, in my personal view, in this fight is how really are both fighters going to deal with the other, especially in terms of the wear and tear or in terms of the weight. And in terms of the wear and tear, Canelo Alvarez clearly has more wear and tear. But when you talk about Terence Bud Crawford, of course, he is going to have to deal with that of the weight and the fact that Canelo Alvarez, that he, of course, has been adjusted to the super middleweight division and also slightly to the light heavyweight division a little bit as well. Canelo Alvarez has been adjusted to much bigger fighters than that of a Terence Bud Crawford, and of course, much bigger fighters even than himself. Canelo Alvarez really does not truly belong at the super middleweight division, but he pretty much can just fit there in terms of weight wise. And on top of that, he's skilled enough overall to where he can beat fighters, even sometimes A grade level fighters, that are a decent amount lengthier and taller than him, and also A grade level. Certain guys like Danny Jacobs and Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, Sergey the Crusher Kovalev, even a Jaime Munguia, if you want to count him, certain guys like that. But anyways, the point being is that when I took a look at this video, I believe that this is by the channel Against the Ropes podcast. I thought that this was very particularly interesting. Mr. Joel Diaz, who of course is one of the greater coaches that I've seen probably of the past 20 years, right up there, overall with some of the other coaches, Robert Garcia, Freddie Roach, of course, Virgil Hunter, Ronnie Shields, a certain amount of the other ones that I may be forgetting, Eddie Reynoso, excuse me, and a certain amount of other ones that I may be personally forgetting, Papa Lomachenko, whoever else you want to include. Anyways, point being is that Joel Diaz, whenever I see him do a breakdown, he usually brings up a lot of factors that in my personal view are very important to bring up when it comes down to breaking a fight like this, but I just thought that he was very particularly interesting, or that this interview was very particularly interesting. And I thought that he brought up a lot of great points for this up and coming fight. And I do think that this is a fight that could go either way, but I am going to go more than likely slightly with Canelo Alvarez, not only because of the skill set, but also because of the combined weight and size. And I just don't know if Terence Bud Crawford is going to be able to really hurt Canelo Alvarez as consistently as what certain people overall believe. And if Crawford does gain a whole bunch of weight, which it appears that he is trying to do, I think that that'll be a massive, massive mistake. But anyways, that being stated, let's see what Mr. Joel Diaz has to say, and let's get straight into it.
The best of the fans.
And there was a lot of people that, stay on the topic of Crawford and getting this Canelo fight. A lot of people said, we're going to look at this Madrigal fight. This is going to be a test to see if Crawford, if there's a ceiling at 154 or 160. Do you feel like there is a ceiling for Crawford, even though we know how talented he is?
You know what? I'm going to tell you something. My opinion is like everybody's opinion. I mean, there's a lot of people that say that Crawford can beat Canelo, no problem. I mean, I respect that, but I just think they're stupid. I mean,
I like a man overall that shoots it straight. Listen, what I'll personally state is this, and basically what he's stating overall is like, your opinion is your opinion, but you're a fucking idiot if you believe that Terence Bud Crawford is just going to move up 2 weight classes against a great fighter like Canelo Alvarez and just completely move him around and dominate him like he did Errol Spence Jr. It's not going to happen. I tend to agree with you, sir. Anyways, what I'm going to personally state is this. If Crawford were able to pull off the victory, I wouldn't really be surprised, because I think that there are certain things that he may be able to give trouble with that of a Canelo Alvarez, such as a great lead hand combined with elite foot movement. That being stated, there are certain things that Canelo Alvarez, in my personal view, can also give trouble to that of a Terence Bud Crawford as well, and not just his weight and not just his size. Canelo Alvarez also has a great jab both to the body and both up top. He also has not just one punch, in my personal view, but he has a few punches, in my personal view, that actually could counter Crawford's game very, very well. One punch, in my personal view, that he could do that could time Crawford very particularly well is the overhand right. Terence Bud Crawford has never really, in particular, been great at avoiding that punch. You can take a look at that against Yuriorkis Gamboa. He damn near got dropped, once or twice, I believe, against Yuriorkis Gamboa from running straight into that right hand. Now, to be fair, I believe that Crawford has been more experienced ever since then and probably grown as a fighter. But of course, Canelo, he's also grown as a fighter ever since his Mayweather and Araceli Lara days. But the point being is that, that's one punch that Crawford, even at his absolute peak, has had a little bit of a problem avoiding. And we didn't just see it with Yuriorkis Gamboa. We also seen it with Sean Porter, where I believe that Sean Porter landed a couple of ones on the inside where Crawford thought that he was going to get off a couple more punches than what he probably should have tried to do. And he ended up getting hit, and it, kind of wobbled him back a couple of times. Not hurt him super, super badly, but at least caught him off guard. He's got to be very careful with that. We also seen Israel Madrimov, of course, land a decent amount of overhand rights in their fight. We also seen Kell Brook land a great jab over the top over Terence Bud Crawford, and also a great right down the pipe. And of course, we also seen not Madrimov, but of course we also seen Aegis Kavalauskas land a multitude of great right hands over Terence Bud Crawford in the southpaw position. One of those right hands pretty much leading to a knockdown in that Terence Bud Crawford fight, which in my view should have been counted as a knockdown because he clinched with Aegis Kavalauskas. Kavalauskas continued punching, and Terence Bud Crawford went down willingly to the knees. So it is what it is. In my view, that was a knockdown, but it is what it is. Anyways, that being stated, of course, Crawford was able to adjust against all those opponents and come back and I believe stop all those opponents, or at least beat them. He didn't stop Madrimov, I believe, but overall he was able to beat him, I think, about 7-5 in my personal view. But the point being is that he's gonna have to really watch out for that punch. Another punch that he's also gonna have to watch out for is a great counter jab over the top. Canelo, although I don't think he has quite the lead hand of a Terence Bud Crawford, he still does have a great lead hand, and do not underestimate Canelo Alvarez's jab nor his lead hand. He still has a great, great lead hand. I would state that Crawford probably has the better lead hand overall, but it's not as far apart as what certain people would like to state that it is. And that being stated, a couple of other punches that Terence Bud Crawford is also going to have to watch out for. Watch out for that shovel left hook, because Canelo Alvarez, especially with Crawford being in the southpaw position, he's going to be looking to throw that left hand down to the body. He's also going to be looking to fake out and throw it up top. So Crawford is going to have to be very, very defensively responsible. And one thing that I've noticed about Crawford sometimes, although at times he can be defensively responsible, he's not really as defensively great as a fighter as what some people would like to say that he is. He's not someone like a Floyd Mayweather. People think that he's a Floyd Mayweather or a Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. He has certain similarities, especially in terms of moving around, using his feet, countering extraordinarily well, and fighting very intelligently. He is a great, great fighter, but he's not someone that I would ever describe as a quote-unquote defensive master. He's someone that, at his absolute best, is a good defensive fighter. I've only ever seen Terence Bud Crawford in one absolutely phenomenal defensive performance, and that was against Errol Spence Jr. That was the only fight where I've actually seen him have phenomenal defense. Every other big fight in his career, whether it was against Gamboa, I mean, maybe Postyle as well, but I mean, that Postyle is someone overall that's as stiff as a board. He's not someone that, in my view, is ever going to give the style of a Crawford any ounce of trouble. But if you take a look at some of his other fights, Gamboa, Porter, Israel Madrimov, even Kell Brook, and I don't think that Kell Brook was really at his best at that time, or an Aegis Kavalauskas. If you take a look at all those fights, Terence Bud Crawford is not really someone that is a quote-unquote defensive master. And what I'll personally state is this: Canelo, even as slow as what he kind of is at this point in time in his career, Canelo is someone that I would describe as a defensive master. He's someone that all around is a defensive fighter at his absolute best, in my personal view. Yes, he's better defensively than Crawford. He's also someone that even has slightly better head movement than Terence Bud Crawford, in my personal view. He also just has better all-around upper body movement. And those are a few of the factors that Canelo Alvarez beats Terence Bud Crawford in, believe it or not. And that's why if you take a look at Terence Bud Crawford in some of his bigger fights, his defensive statistics aren't really as impressive as what you may think that they are. And certain people may not know this statistic, but keep in mind, Canelo Alvarez made certain fighters, even all-time great fighters, or even certain fighters that are highly particularly accurate, like an Araceli Lara, even a Dimitri Bivol. People don't know. Canelo Alvarez had Dimitri Bivol landing at a 21% percent connect percentage. Artur I believe overall, he landed 10 more percent against Artur. Now, of course, certain people may say, well, Canelo was the smaller target, so, maybe that's the reason, right? But it just goes to show you how great defensively Canelo Alvarez is. And if you actually rewatch the Bivol fight, although, of course, Canelo Alvarez, he gets hit with a lot of great flush punches, he doesn't really get hit as flush in a lot of those exchanges as what you may personally think. And here's another statistic. Bivol landed less of a percentage on Canelo Alvarez while having also the size advantage, as well as also being someone that is severely dominant. He landed a lesser percentage than what a Sean Porter did, and also what an Israel Madrimov did over Terence Bud Crawford. Keep that in mind. So a certain amount of people overall, now, of course, we can't just take a look at those two fights, but the reason why it's so hard to judge with Terence Bud Crawford is because of the majority of the fighters in his career, they've not really been super high of quality. And I know that a certain amount of people that they're going to disagree with that, and they'll say, oh, the stats, they show that Crawford, is better defensively, all this other stuff, right? But, I mean, it's no offense, but who can't really look defensively elite against guys like Jose Benavidez and Jeff Horn and some of these other guys, Hank Lundy and, Julius Ndongo and some of these other guys? I'm sorry, but it is what it is. If Canelo Alvarez was fighting those same guys, people would be calling him cherry. They would say that he would be cherry picking.
Excuse my language. I mean, look, Benavidez fought Demetrius Andre. Demetrius Andre, a fighter that everybody avoided. Nobody wanted to fight him because he's very talented, great fighter.
Well, Andrade definitely was avoided throughout a lot of his career, including by Canelo Alvarez for a little bit. But I mean, I actually don't even blame Canelo Alvarez for that. And the reason why I don't blame Canelo Alvarez is because Canelo basically took a look at that fight and he said, this dude is just a little bit too much risk for the reward. Why the hell would I want to fight this guy when he's particularly dangerous? And then on top of that, no one knows who the fuck this guy is. Now, of course, if you're a hardcore boxing fan, and if you're someone that, really loves boxing like myself, of course you know who, the fighters like Demetrius Andrade or Rigondeaux or Araceli Lara are. But the thing is that Andrade, and it's no offense against him, but he kind of fucked himself out of multiple opportunities, and both with Showtime and Al Heyman, and kind of overall, his all-around career. I'm not blaming all on him because, of course, we know that There were certain times where fighters did avoid him, like when Billy Joe Saunders was caught on PEDs, and that fight was, squashed, unfortunately. And of course, there were other times where I thought Andrade kind of got the short end of the stick, but he also kind of gave himself the short end of the stick at times as well. There was at one point in time where he had an opportunity to fight Jermell Charlo, and I understand that he felt that he was getting lowballed. But dude, that would have been so massive for your career. I mean, it just is what it is. I understand the thinking, but at the end of the day, it would have been a massive, massive thing if you really would have beat Jermell Charlo at that point in time in your career. The Charlo brothers were very big even at that time when they were still undefeated, or at least when Jermell Charlo was still undefeated. And overall, it just would have been very, very big for your career. But I mean, it is what it is. And I believe that, there was also a rumor that Andrade was actually offered a Jermell Charlo fight. At least Steven Espinoza stated that they offered him one in 2019, and apparently he declined it. And of course, Canelo and Andrade, I believe that they actually were in talks in 2019, but of course, Canelo decided to go another route. He went up to 175 and fought that of a Sergey Kovalev, but I don't really blame Canelo Alvarez for that, because Kovalev, of course, was a former pound-for-pound fighter, and he was someone that was coming off of two very great wins at 175, and of course, it would have made him a four-weight division champion, and it would have been a great move and a great look for his career. But anyways.
Great person, great friend. Benavidez is a great fighter himself, too. He's strong, a lot of confidence, but Demetrius Andrade went from 54 to 60 because nobody wanted to fight him at 54. He went to 60, fought a couple fights at 60. Nobody wants to fight him at 60. So what did he do?
Well, it's no offense against Demetrius Andrade, but you were really supposed to be fighting at 160 a while ago. It's no offense, but people at 154, that's really more for people like Canelo Alvarez when he was younger, Erisani Lara, Austin Trout, certain guys like that. That's not really for guys like Jermell Charlo and Demetrius Andrade. Like, those guys were kind of weight and height bullies at that weight class. If you're getting to the point to where you're about 6 foot or over, which both Demetrius Andrade and Jermell Charlo, they pretty much are, you're pretty much a weight bully for that weight class. I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
He moved up to 60.
Unless, of course, if you're completely built like a Sebastian Fundora, which, of course, we know that Demetrius Andrade and Jermell Charlo, that they're not. And even Sebastian Fundora, as skinny as what he is at 6'6", there's no fucking way that he should be fighting at 154. That dude is also a massive weight bully.
58 to 5 Benavidez. And you know what? I was watching the fight and I saw Demetrius Andrade be successful in the first 2-3 rounds. But that's the size difference. The size difference of a bigger man changes everything with one punch.
I agree with you, sir. But what I will personally state is this. I don't think the only reason why Andrade ended up losing that David Benavidez fight was because of the size. Now, if they were more similar in size, say if David Benavidez was about 15 pounds lighter, and they were more similar in terms of girth and everything like that, I mean, maybe Demetrius Andrade would win that fight. But the thing is about David Benavidez, once again, a lot of people, they just take a look at things on the surface. They take a look at David Benavidez. That's why so many people, they predicted that David Morrell was just going to embarrass David Benavidez, because you had all these people that said that, oh, Morrell is the slick fighter, he's the boxer, blah, 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 and that's not what he is. And that's why you see David Morrell, and that's why I told people he's not a boxer. He's someone overall that likes to come forward, throw a few counters. He's someone overall that likes to set you up on the front foot. He can box to a degree, but he's not someone that's a great all-around boxer. David Benavidez, although he's someone that, has holes in his system, he's someone that has certain flaws, he's a better boxer than what certain people give him credit for. He is a better boxer, believe it or not, than what a David Morrell is. And the thing is about Demetrius Andrade, I've been saying this about Andrade for a long time, is no offense against him. But I've been hearing for I don't know how many years about how talented this dude is and the amateur pedigree and blah, 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 and all that bullshit. And the only big fight that he ever was a part of, I kept hearing all this shit about how he was 10 times more talented than Caleb Plant, because I always compared those two fighters, and all I heard about for many years was how much better Andrade was. You're going to see Andrade overall is going to show you guys, and he showed me what I always thought he exactly was, which is what? Someone that is a great talent, but someone who was way, 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 way hyped up. Someone overall who was a great, great talent. But was he ever above, a peak level Caleb Plant? No, not in my personal view. And pretty much my point was proven correct once he was shown against David Benavidez. Because it's no offense, but Andrade is someone with about a 73-inch reach or something like that. And on top of that, he's about 6'1", somewhere around there. You know, I mean, you could be easily fighting at the super middleweight division if you really wanted to. Now, to be fair, that was his first time fighting there, but the thing is that I mean, come on, Andrade is at the very least a natural middleweight. You can, and he could possibly very easily compete with the super middleweights. In all honesty, he's just about as big as a Caleb Plant. You're telling me overall that he's 10 times better than Caleb Plant, 10 times better than all these guys, 10 times better than Charlo, you know, all this other stuff, way more talented than Canelo and Golovkin, and he can't even go after the sixth round against David Benavidez? Like, are you serious? But I'm sorry, but no.
And I can see the same thing. I mean, you saw Canelo Alvarez fighting Amir Khan. Now, look at this. Terence Crawford.
Now, of course, what a certain amount of Terence Bud Crawford fans would state is that, well, Amir Khan, he ended up having success against Canelo Alvarez in the first couple of rounds, but Terence Bud Crawford outboxed him the whole entire fight. Right, but you can't always base things off of that, and I'm going to tell you why. Because styles make fights. When we take a look overall at an Alexander Usyk, many people were predicting overall because of the trouble that he had over Derek Chisora. They said, oh, well, AJ Anthony, Joshua overall, and Tyson Fury, they're better boxers. So they're just going to pressure him, and basically overall, they're going to overwhelm him. And then take a look and see what happened. The point is just because one fighter has a little bit of success in one particular area doesn't mean, especially when the factors are way different, that this boxer is going to have the same amount of success. Especially with Terence Bud Crawford moving up in substantial weight for this fight, which I don't think is a very smart move at all. And when I mean moving up in weight, I'm not even just talking about moving up 2 weight classes. I'm talking about trying to compete with Canelo Alvarez in terms of weight, which I hope that Terence Bud Crawford really is not trying to do for his sake, but it appears that he is. And I think that that's something that will not fare very well for him, but I could be wrong about that. We'll see. But, you know, the thing is that overall, you know, like I stated, we'll see. But Amir Khan is someone that is a very, very fast fighter. He always has early success. Canelo Alvarez is someone that is a great all-around skilled fighter, but he's not someone overall, you know, that is as quick as a Terence Bud Crawford because he's naturally bigger. So, of course, you expect someone that is the lighter and the quicker fighter, someone that is as fast as Amir Khan, and someone, of course, who I believe is about as tall and as lengthy as Canelo Alvarez, if not even a little bit more. Of course, you expect him to have a little bit of success early, but, of course, Canelo Alvarez showed after about 2 rounds that he was able to adapt to that. There was never, you know, any time even looking at that fight now that I just expected Canelo Alvarez to completely look like a Terence Bud Crawford in that fight because Canelo Alvarez, of course, is not as quick as what a Terence Bud Crawford is. So just because someone has a little bit more success against a bigger man overall than what he did against a smaller man doesn't always mean that that smaller man is going to win that fight, if that makes sense, because styles make fights.
We're from 47 to 54 to fight Madrimov. What did you do to Madrimov? Nothing. Okay, Madrimov is a 54-pounder. Now, to move up to 168, that's 2 more divisions. Canelo Alvarez will take any punch from Crawford, but I don't think Crawford will take any punches from Canelo.
100% agreed. Now, what I will personally state is this. The question is that who is going to hit more flush on fight night? It could be either man. It could be possible that Terence Bud Crawford with his lead hand, maybe that he can time Canelo Alvarez a little bit better. What I'll personally state is this. The game plan that Terence Bud Crawford and Canelo Alvarez need to have, Terence Bud Crawford, in my view, he needs to time Canelo Alvarez with the jab the whole entire night. He needs to have a stabbing jab. He needs to use his lateral foot movement and completely try to set Canelo Alvarez off balance with the constant foot movement back and forth and use of angles. That pretty much is the only way that you can really set Canelo Alvarez off balance. That pretty much is the proven formula if you want to try and set him off balance. And even at this point in time in his career, he's proven that he can somewhat adjust to it. Now, of course, in his most recent fight against William Skull, he definitely was thrown off a little bit balanced, but honestly, I can't tell if that was really because Canelo just has that much of a problem with that type of foot movement still, or if it's overall because he's just a little bit older and on top of that fighting a guy, you know, that did not really throw that many offensive opportunities. And on top of that, Canelo Alvarez is just older. He's someone that is nowhere near as quick as what he was. And Skull is a natural 168-pounder, so it's a little bit hard for me to judge. But I think that for Canelo, that more than likely it could be a bit easier to cut off the ring with a Crawford, but we'll see.
Remember, Canelo got hit by Triple G, the heaviest hitter in that division. And Canelo took those shots like a champ.
Agreed. And Canelo has not only just taken shots from Triple G, He's taking shots from everybody. He's taking shots overall from Kovalev. He's taking shots from Dmitry Bivol. He's taking shots from Golovkin. He's taking shots from Lara. He's taking shots from everybody. He's never even been knocked down once in his career. So you have these certain people overall that just believe that Crawford's going to move up a couple of weight classes and that the fight is just going to look like Crawford versus Spence. Like, and I had some of these guys in my comment section that say, "Oh, Crawford, he wants to prove that he's stronger than Canelo Alvarez." Man, you don't understand. Crawford's a different type of dog, right? And Canelo Alvarez, I guarantee you, is going to be preying on that fact. There's a certain verse I believe in the Bible. Overall, certain people would mention pride comes before destruction. And sometimes when you don't try to win a fight based off of your advantages, but you try to compete with what your opponent does really, really well, sometimes that can be, a formula for destruction. Now, don't get it twisted. There are certain times where the fighter does something where people thought that it was going to play into the advantage of the other guy, and then they actually ended up winning the fight. Evander Holyfield fought Mike Tyson on the inside, and he ended up actually winning the fight. Tyson Fury ended up coming forward against Deontay Wilder. Many people thought that he was crazy. He ended up completely dominating the fight. But the thing is this: Crawford trying to gain the same amount of weight as a Canelo Alvarez, in my view, is not a smart idea. And I don't care how much vitamins you're on with the quote-unquote snack program. I don't give a shit. At the end of the day, first of all, not only is Canelo Alvarez on those special vitamins too, when it comes down to it, but on top of that, you're fighting a fighter that is a great fighter and someone that has been adjusted to that weight for a very long time. Say whatever you want, but I've never seen a fighter move up 2 weight classes before. I mean, Canelo's really more of a middleweight, but still he's more adjusted to that weight class. Crawford, even though he's still going to have to gain about 20 pounds in order to really try to compete with Canelo Alvarez's weight, I've never seen a fighter gain 20 pounds and just be able to move a fighter that was natural of that weight class, or if not natural at that weight class, at least built himself up to that weight class, and they were just able to move him around no problem like what they did other opponents in their other weight classes. It's never happened before in the history of boxing. I've never seen it happen.
I don't think Crawford has anything to beat Canelo, even if he's beating him by points. Before the bell rings at the end of the 12th round, he will not make it.
Yeah.
We'll see about that. I'm not going to completely go off of that because Canelo Alvarez, I do believe, is slower, and he is someone that, although I think that he gets this, this frame as being this one-dimensional fighter, he's someone that, in my view, is a multi-dimensional fighter, but he has become a little bit more predictable in terms of his offense as of late because he has slowed down. He's someone overall to where sometimes he'll wind up his punches, especially if he's trying to trap you up against the ropes, and at times you can hit him between the spaces. But here's the question: can Terence Crawford hit Canelo during the spaces, and can he make Canelo Alvarez respect him? Because if Terence Crawford, what I'm going to personally say is this: if Crawford, let's say, on fight night weighs 185 or something like that, if he truly weighs about 180 to 185, and after a couple of rounds, we're starting to see the toll. And if Canelo gets on the inside range, Crawford is not going to have any chance to win the fight. He's not going to have any chance because I don't give a shit what people say. There's no way that Terence Crawford is going to be standing there toe-to-toe with Canelo Alvarez, someone who's been adjusted to 168 pounds now for several years. And overall, Terence Crawford is just going to be trading with him on the inside, and it's going to work out for him. No way in hell. No way whatsoever. Crawford is going to have to win this fight by trying to fight either within the mid-range or on the outside, mainly especially on that of the outside range. Or if you can keep it within the mid-range, great. If you can keep Canelo Alvarez, actually kind of, being a little bit more in cruise control, or overall, if you can keep Canelo trying to out-counter you and use your speed to your advantage, that probably would be the best range to be. But I just don't see Canelo Alvarez really falling for that. I think Canelo Alvarez more than likely realizes that he's going to have to make this fight very, very ugly.
I think there's weight classes for a reason.
Exactly.
Right, Coach?
There's weight classes for a reason, and it's too big of a man. Obviously, the business of the sport is they want to give Crawford millions of dollars, right? But don't try to come and try to fool me, telling me that Crawford can beat Canelo. There is no way. There is no way.
Well, I'm not going to claim overall that there's no way that Terence Crawford overall can beat Canelo Alvarez. That being stated, I've seen a couple of interviews with Joel Diaz in the past, and he does not appear to be the biggest supporter of Canelo. He doesn't appear overall to like Canelo Alvarez quite as much. I'm not going to call him a hater necessarily, but he is someone that does seem a little bit stern with Canelo Alvarez. So could this maybe be a way of him, embarrassing Canelo even that much more further if Crawford were to win the fight by claiming overall that there's no way that you should have lost this fight? Maybe. Because what I'll personally state is this: I'm never going to go as far to claim that Terence Bud Crawford, especially because Canelo's really more of a middleweight. He's not really a super middleweight. Like I said, 5'7.5" with not even a 71-inch arm reach, and Crawford is taller and lengthier than him. Now, of course, is Crawford still smaller than him by about a couple weight classes? Yes, of course. But the thing is that this fight is not too far off from a Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler fight. But the reason why Sugar Ray Leonard won that fight is because he was able to keep his speed advantage. He didn't try to compete with the weight in terms of Marvin Hagler. He didn't try to get up as beefed as him. Why would you want to do that for? Keep your speed advantage, so you can outbox him from the outside or possibly the mid-range. Why the fuck would you want to try to compete with the weight with him, with a fighter that has been adapted to that weight class? It would make no sense. So that's why I say overall, in my personal view, if Terence Bud Crawford is really doing that, and it appears that he's trying to, it just isn't the best idea.
That Crawford can be Canelo. And not because he's not a great fighter. He's a great fighter. He's a superstar. He's
Agreed.
the best pound for pound fighter, but in his division.
Right now, I would have Alexander Usyk, but of course, what a certain amount of people are alleging is that Crawford, first of all, that not only can be the best pound for pound, which I mean, you could debate. I think that he would probably lose that debate right now to Terence Bud Crawford, or excuse me, that he would lose that debate to Alexander Usyk, But I mean, you could still debate it. He still is a great fighter. And of course, many people would debate that he's hands down the most skilled fighter in the world. Now, in my personal view, at everybody's best, I think that Crawford, Usyk, and Canelo Alvarez, that they're all comparable to one another. They just have different things that they do well or better than the other. But I mean, like I said, I could be completely wrong. Let's see in the fight.
I mean, risking other divisions, especially 3 divisions up, is hard. Yeah. And we go back, and I can mention many, many names. Mikey Garcia, when Mikey Garcia fought Earl Spence, I'm telling you, Mikey Garcia to me has been one of the greatest technicians, skillful, everything. He had power, very skillful fighter. But he went from one...
Mikey Garcia is a very greatly skilled fighter, but there's a reason why he's never talked about. And people call many of these other fighters cherry pickers like Mayweather and Canelo and, other guys like this. But the thing is that people still talk about Mayweather and Canelo. They talk about them on a daily basis. No one ever talks about Mikey Garcia. And the reason why no one ever talks about Mikey Garcia is not because he wasn't a great fighter. It's because he didn't fucking fight anybody. Like I said, name Mikey Garcia's 5 best wins in his career. Orlando Salido, Adrian Broner, Robert Easter, Zlatan Slatichnik, whoever the fuck that Montenegro fighter was or the Balkan fighter was, and maybe one other fighter that I'm not thinking of, Roman Martinez. Like that's really about it. And he had the opportunity to fight certain guys. He had the opportunity to fight Lomachenko. He didn't want to fight him. He had the opportunity to fight Yuri Gamboa. He didn't want to fight him. He had the opportunity to fight other fighters. He didn't want to fight them. So people overall consider Canelo, for example, a real cherry picker. No, the person who's a real, and I'm not claiming that Canelo maybe did not avoid certain fights or that Canelo has not had controversy in his career. But Canelo's resume is still stacked with many great opponents. Mikey Garcia, you can't really name one, opponent that really stands out in terms of greatness.
35 to 47 to fight
Earl Spence.
a physically strong fighter on Earl Spence is hard. He did what he had to do. And look, he lost against Earl Spence, and everybody gave more credit to Mikey because, man, he went 12 rounds with a welterweight. Great. He did his job.
Earl Spence, in my personal view, although that was a great win at the time, he kind of got more credit as an all-around boxer, in my personal view, than what certain people, really thought, or than really what he actually was. I think that he outboxed very well on Mikey Garcia in that fight because Mikey was not the same size, and he had never really fought at that weight class before, and Mikey is a guy that could fit around 135 or 140. That being stated, Spence still boxed very well, and Spence can still box very well against fighters like a Danny Garcia or guys like a Sean Porter, certain guys like that. But against guys that actually know how to box within a great multitude of ways, like a Terence Bud Crawford, he's never going to be able to beat those guys. Because Errol Spence is not really someone that is great within a multitude of areas. He's someone that is very great within the inside range. If he can break you down, that's mainly what he likes to do. But if you force him, to fight more within the mid-range or the long range, he's going to have more problems. Even take a look at his fight against Kell Brook. He pretty much had to break down Kell Brook throughout the majority of the fight. If you force him to counterpunch in the mid-range, or really fight within the long range against fighters like that, he's not going to do very well.
I like Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia from the beginning of his career, I've been a big fan of his style. He's great. The Mexican style with technique.
With technique, yeah.
With technique.
Shots fired at the quote-unquote Mexican style. But I think I know what he's talking about there, because there's a lot of Mexican fighters, although of course you have many, many, many great Mexican fighters. You have certain Mexican fighters, of course, that really struggle with feet and footwork. On top of that, could improve their head movement a little bit. And on top of that, overall, just sometimes are a little bit too much of a brawler's type of fighter. But that being stated, of course, you have excellent all-time great fighters in Mexico, like Chavez and Salvador Sanchez and Canelo and Marquez and Barrera and Morales and certain guys like that, of course. Finites or whatever his name was, the small dude, I believe at the lower weight classes. Anyway.
Yeah, but that's it. We can talk about this all night, but there is no way. I mean, right now they're talking about it. They're trying to make people believe, and all these kiss asses. They say, "Oh, that Crawford can beat Canelo." It's not. Just try to stop being a kiss ass. You're not right.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people really are just trying to be a kiss ass. I think that many people, once again, when they take a look at a fight like this, and you've seen this also a lot with Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence, people took a look at it and said that Mikey Garcia, that he's way more skilled than Spence, but Spence has the size, blah, blah, blah. People always say this with this type of matchup. But the thing is that Errol Spence, he showed in that fight that he's a lot more skilled than what certain people thought that he was. Now, he can do that style against a Mikey Garcia or other guys of the welterweight division, but he was never going to be able to do that against Crawford, because compared to Crawford, he is nowhere near the mid-range nor the long-range fighter of a Terence Bud Crawford. And Crawford was even beating Errol Spence in the inside range within that fight. But do I believe that Crawford will beat Canelo in the inside range? No, I don't. I believe that Canelo Alvarez is a better inside fighter than Crawford. Crawford just, he does good things on the inside, suffocating offense. He's someone that uses his lead hand very well, and he has good counters on the inside as well, but he sometimes leaves himself a little bit too open. And I understand that Crawford likes to try and compete with guys as strength. Listen, dude, Canelo's a strong dude. You're talking about a guy overall to where it's like, listen, I know that he's only about 5'7.5", but that dude is pretty much completely muscle impacted. He has big legs. He's someone that has a big midsection, he's someone that is very, 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 very strong. Like, I believe that, Bivol tried to clinch with him and Canelo lifted him up, I believe, just with his, legs, and his neck. So, Canelo Alvarez is someone that is strong, so, Crawford trying to compete with Canelo and his strength and trying to grapple with him and all sorts of bullshit. People keep bringing up, all this wrestling shit. In my view, none of that is going to matter. What's going to matter, though, is that, if Crawford seemingly wears down within the first couple of rounds, here's what I'll personally state. I think that we'll see the winner of this fight probably within about the first 4 rounds. If Crawford wins all the first 4 rounds, I would predict him to win the fight. If Canelo, overall starts, winning the 3rd and the 4th and then the 5th, I would start to predict that Canelo Alvarez more than likely is going to wear Terence Bud Crawford down. I expect Crawford more than likely to have a little bit, overall of, success against Canelo, at least to a degree, but I could be wrong.
And we'll see it after the fight, I'll tell you guys. Right now they're trying to blow up the fight, yes, but there's no way. I'm telling you, Canelo is very skillful. He's strong.
Agreed, sir. Yeah, these people overall that, and he showed overall, the head movement there. Why? Because Canelo overall, one of his best skills is his upper body movement. And once again, he does have better head movement and upper body movement and defense than Terence Bud Crawford. He just does. And I know that a certain amount of people overall, that they're not going to believe me. I've already told people this. Take a look at Terence Bud Crawford's statistics in some of his bigger fights. I'm not talking about his bum-ass fights against guys like Hank Lundy and Thomas Delorme and Joyce Ndango. I'm talking about Sean Porter, Israel Madrimov, overall, and some of those guys. Those are the guys that I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course, everything changes as we go. Wear and tear, years, we get older. But still, up to this point, Canelo, at this point, he'll still be Crawford, no problem.
So pretty much saying that
we'll see.
It's a cash out for Terence Crawford.
Yeah, they're just trying to catch him out.
Respect for chasing greatness.
Well, this is where I actually disagree. I think that the cash overall is a part of it, but do I believe that Terence Bud Crawford is someone that would ever just cash out? No, I don't. Now, I've seen certain fighters that maybe you didn't think would cash out overall, that they were going to cash out. Listen, just from what I've seen, and I'm pretty usually good at reading situations, and this is why I predicted it overall with the Jamel Charlo situation. As soon as I seen Jamel Charlo at the press conference, I knew that all he was doing was cashing out. when he was overall, he was treating Canelo Alvarez overall like a slave master in that fight. He was treating him overall like Samuel L. Jackson's character treated, Mr. Candy, in Django Unchained, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. Great movie, by the way. But anyways, point being is that Jermell Charlo treated overall Canelo Alvarez, overall like he was his boss, like he was his manager. So, I mean, I could tell immediately that Jermell Charlo, he didn't believe he was going to win that fight. He was talking all this shit, prior, but, at the press conference, he was giving Canelo Alvarez all this respect. And you can give a fighter respect, but I always say this. When a fighter all of a sudden seems out of sorts, when they usually talk shit or they're usually quiet and then all of a sudden they're the opposite, that's how you know that, they know something's up. Anyway.
Yeah, respect for chasing greatness. He's gonna make a lot of money. He deserves it because he's been at the top of the game for many years.
Yeah. And another fight, Coach Caesar, you have a little bit insight in, was the Bivol Better rematch earlier in 2024. Another contested fight. I think it feels like it's divided boxers, boxing fans. Some people say Better won, others feel Bivol won. Who do you think won that fight in your opinion?
I was watching
Well, the first fight I thought Better Bivol won about 8 rounds to 4, 7 rounds to 5. A lot of people thought that Bivol got robbed. In my view, he didn't get robbed whatsoever. I just thought that Better Bivol fairly won. In the rematch, I thought Bivol won 7 rounds to 5, and I predicted Better Bivol to win because I thought Bivol was more than likely, going to still be a little bit shy to throw punches, which is why I predicted Better Bivol to win the first fight. Because I noticed against Canelo Alvarez that when Canelo was having a little bit of success before he tired out in that fight, Bivol was actually a little bit reluctant to throw punches. But good on Dimitri Bivol, he was smart enough to make the proper adjustments in the rematch and really use his feet and occupy the vacated space. And even with that, the fight was very close. I still scored it 7 rounds to 5 for Dimitri Bivol. Who's going to win the trilogy? When that fight is set up, I would probably slightly predict Dimitri Bivol. But we'll see what adjustments are to Better Bivol can make. It's a very, very tough trilogy to call.
I was watching the fight and I saw some very controversial rounds in the later rounds. But I can tell you this: I've had Bivol because we were watching the fight and we're focusing on it because we knew it was a tough fight.
But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I just thought that was very interesting, and that may actually be my official fight prediction for the fight. But who would I predict to win the fight? I would predict Canelo Alvarez to win the fight. I just think that his combined weight and skill is going to be a bit too much. Now, if Crawford was staying at around 160 or 165, like what he regularly did, and that was his max weight, then I would say no problem. But the thing is that if Crawford is actually trying to compete with Canelo Alvarez's weight, to me, that's a major problem. Why would you want to take one of your key advantages away, slow down for a weight class that you've never been at before? Because do you really think you're going to be able to compete with Canelo Alvarez's power and size and chin on the inside range? I highly doubt it. It just is what it is. It just, in my personal view, is not the smart move. But anyway, but that pretty much is about it for today. But thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later, and we'll see where this goes.